Welcome, dear friends, to Kardec Radio at 11 p.m., nourishing our souls with one more Spirit of the Truth. And today we have here with us Emmanuel, the coordinator of all the works by Chico Xavier. He is the very author of amazing books through Chico Xavier, but mainly the novels 2,000 years ago, 50 years later. Hail Christ, Renunciation, Poland Stephen, books that are deeply transformative for us, very empowering. It's very inspirational when we see the ones who are ahead and how they are teaching us. And today, Emmanuel, in the Spirit of Truth, this book that is inspiring us at this current time on earth. We need the truth. The truth sets us free from our ignorance, showing things we need to do. Today, he's going to talk about a theme that is so important. Keep yourself in God. Keep yourself in God. Of course, he is inspired in the Gospel according to Spiritism by Allan Kardec, chapter 6. I'm opening here. In chapter 6, so beautiful. All the chapters, but this chapter in specific is titled The Consoling Christ. At a time on earth when we're having so many challenges, this is the nature of times. We're living in a transition on earth. It's like when you are moving from one home to the next. That transition is very, sometimes unsettling, sometimes challenging, but we can find ourselves in a safe haven where keeping ourselves in God. So Emmanuel inspired himself in this chapter 6. Chapter 6 is the chapter where we're going to find messages from the Spirit of Truth received at Kardec's time. And this one specifically received 100 years before Emmanuel wrote this very message that we're going to read to you. It's the Spirit of Truth. He says, I have come to teach and console the disinherited poor. I have come to tell them to raise their resignation to the level of their trials, to weep, for sorrow was sacred in the Garden of Olives, but also to hope, for consoling angels will come to wipe away their tears. Workers, trace out your path. The next day, restart the trying journey of the day before. The labor of your hands supplies earthly bread for your bodies, but your souls are not forgotten. Truly I say to you, those who bear their burdens and help their brothers and sisters are my beloved. Instruct yourselves in the precious doctrines that dissipates the error of rebelliousness and teaches you the sublime purpose of the human trial. The Spirit of Truth. I just read excerpts, but you can go to chapter 6 and you're going to find several messages by the Spirit of Truth. It's the message from the Christ. He's saying rebelliousness is an error. You know, when things happen to us and we are like, oh, why me? I wish. This morning I was reading a post and I shared on my Facebook page, my personal Facebook page. It's in Portuguese though. A post by Dr. Américo Canhoto. He is a spiritist physician in Brazil, a scholar who wrote many books, very wise. He talks about the foundation of cancer, and he talks about depression, he talks about sadness. And he says now during the pandemic, many people are sad. Oh, I wish life were different. Even when it goes all back to what it was, it's never going to be the same. Thank God. We are progressing. This resistance to progress, the resistance to change, creates rebelliousness, and that vibration is detrimental to us. So, Emmanuel, through Chico Xavier, brings to us today this very, very important message. Let us read. Remember, God, so that you know how to be grateful for the talents of life. First line, keep yourself in God. Remember God so that you know how to be grateful for the talents of life. If tired, fatigued, think of God, the eternal Father who never stops in creation. If sad, elevate your feelings to God, meditating on the solar joy of every morning. His infinite goodness dissolves the darkness. If sick, focus on the perfect balance with which God's compassion readjusts nature's landscapes, even when the storm comes to destroy all the resources that were accumulated for millennia. If you are misunderstood, turn to God, the eternal donor of all blessings, that many times is mocked by our own weaknesses, without patiently, without having the immeasurable patience discouraged, if humiliated, deliver yourself to God. Deliver your pains of your wounded sensitivity and underestimated pride. Reflect on God's anonymity, in which his inconceivable greatness hides, so that we believe that we are the authors of the good that belongs to him in all circumstances. If you are alone, seek God's sublime company in the person of those who follow behind you, staggering in suffering, lonelier than you, in the trial and misery that cripples their hours and crucify their homes. If you are distressed, trust God with your anxieties, realizing that in him the imperishable love subsides all the storms. Whatever the difficulty, remember the all merciful that does not forget us. And embracing your own duty as an expression of God's divine will for your daily steps, you will find in prayer the true strength for your faith, to elevate you from obscurity and earth's problems to the path of light that points you to the direction of heaven. How amazing this message. It's training us. Emmanuel is coaching you and I to put God as center of our universe. So he says, remember God in whatever circumstance. And there is something he says here that is ever more striking. He says, when you're feeling humiliated, remember of God. He blends into our lives so much that we believe we are the authors of everything good, when he is the one that creates everything good for us. We're co-creators, we're not creators. We don't create anything from scratch. Not even our intelligence is ours. Time is not ours. Even our health is not ours. It's a concession. Thus the need. He says, the talents of life. What are your talents? Let's think of your talents, because each talent needs to be multiplied. What is your talent? What are your talents? Let us think of our talents as gifts of God: time, health, material resources, intelligence, the good in us. What is not God sent? Everything else is just an unfoldment from us, our efforts, but it comes from God. As the Spirit of Truth said 160 years ago at Kardec's time, chapter 6, the consoling Christ. Item 8, no to rebelliousness. Oh, but I wish it were sunnier. I wish I could travel. I wish. And we learned recently with André Luis here in this program of the Spirit of Truth that when we are complaining, you remember that, right? When we are complaining, it's true vinegar in our lives. It's not worthwhile. Rebelliousness doesn't feel good at all. So Emmanuel today is asking us to see when we're tired, sad, sick, misunderstood, humiliated, alone, and distressed. 7 scenarios. He's saying, bring God. Keep yourself in God. You're tired. It's okay. Breathe in and out. And remember, you have everything that you need in God to restore. If you're sad, remember the joy of the sun that comes every day to wake us up. If we're sick, remember that God restores the balance in spite of the storms. If we are misunderstood, remember that God is misunderstood and yet He keeps feeding us. Humiliated, God does not push us to make Him feel the good. And if we are feeling alone, God asks us to seek those who are more lonelier, more lonely or lonelier. And if we're distressed, anxious, remember that in God, we can keep ourselves safe. So here's an affirmation for the next 24 hours as a true exercise for every scenario we're going to live. Put your hand in your heart and repeat, I love keeping myself in God. In whatever scenario, I love keeping myself in God. I love keeping myself in God. I love to keep myself in God, however we want to say it. Today, we're being invited to exercise putting God in every scenario in our lives. One day we'll know it so well that we'll be like Jesus. It's just second nature. For now, we need to make an effort, conscious effort, keeping ourselves in God. I keep myself in God. I keep myself in God. And then I understand that God is always caring for us. And whenever trials come, God is pushing our limits, saying, You have no idea about the potential you have. You're going to discover more. God is amazing. There's always something beautiful to discover. We're in training. You and I are in the school of God. We are in training and we're being asked to value everything, to seek the good and feel how precious and wealthy in our resources, spreading the talents of life. As Emmanuel says, remember God so that you know how to be grateful for the talents of life. That's the message for today. Let us meditate. Let us feel ourselves in God all day long and visualize ourselves there all the time. If you have any question, write here in the comments. If you have something more you want to share, you can write to cardiacradio@gmail.com. For now, we'll keep ourselves in the exercise. I keep myself in God. I love to keep myself in God throughout the day. Thank you for being here with us at Cardiac Radio. We wish you many blessings. A big hug. Thank you, friends.